My colleagues and I study what's called fiscal incidence analysis. Those are some fancy words for the study of government taxes and social grants. We use a method that allows us to measure the effects of government intervention on poverty and inequality, and we did this for Namibia. What we find is that there are some taxes that are very, very good at reducing inequality. We also find that there are some transfers that are good at reducing inequality. In fact, over the course of the whole fiscal system, when the government is finished with its meddling, at the end of the year, when you count it all up, the cumulative effect of taking taxes and handing out grants, that inequality really does go down by quite a lot. It actually achieves one of the highest reductions in inequality in the world. You can see blue over there is Namibia. The issue is that Namibia starts out with the second highest inequality in the world, next to South Africa. So even after this very large reduction in inequality, through fiscal policy, inequality is still way too high. What's more, even though the fiscal policy reduces inequality by a huge amount, it also increases poverty. We can see Namibia in the middle blue at 1.6. This is one of the major findings of our method of study, is that these two things can be true at the same time. That government intervention, taking taxes and distributing benefits, can be both inequality reducing and poverty increasing. So we can shrink the gap between the rich and the poor, and some households can be impoverished, pulling their households' incomes below the poverty line. And our job is to figure out which households are paying too much and not receiving enough, and which households are paying too little and receiving too much, and by which mechanisms this is happening. But the ultimate goal is to invent policies that further reduce inequality, but which also do not increase poverty. Hopefully reduce it, yeah. Through our study, we identified a few key areas where that might be accomplished. So first, direct taxes, the income taxes you pay. When you get your paycheck, that tax has already been removed. This is the one we're talking about. In Namibia, income taxes are already very progressive. In 2019, the year that we did this study, you have a threshold of 50,000 Namibian dollars before you start paying tax. So most of the population doesn't have to pay. About half of the population doesn't have to pay income tax. And those who do pay any income tax at all are the richest households. In fact, those who pay any tax at all fall almost exclusively in the top 20% of the population, the richest 20%. And most of those are in the top 10%. So the rates that those households pay are also progressive by comparison with many other countries. That progressivity just doesn't do enough to help the fact that this is a very unequal society, though. The current top marginal tax rate could be increased. Say if it's currently 37%, you could increase it to 39 or 40%. The top tax rate in South Africa is 45. There could even be a further top tax rate added, say for those who earn more than $2 million a year, that carries a 60% tax rate. These are all possibilities. Increasing the progressivity of income taxes is a major driver of inequality reduction and has the added benefit of being unable to increase poverty. Indirect taxes it's on the same one. Indirect taxes are a different story. Those taxes are the consumption taxes you pay, like VAT. So you're taxed on the income when you get your paycheck. Those are the direct taxes. You put that cash in your pocket, you go to the store, you buy a coffee, and you pay an additional tax on the price of that coffee. That's the indirect tax. So Namibia has 0% tax rates on certain goods like basic foods, which can be good because they reduce the burden of consumption taxes on the poor. But there's space here to make a policy change as well. Imagine if you took the 0% tax rate that is currently on fuel and increased it to the standard rate of 15%. That's going to affect people, make their fuel needs more expensive. It may even impoverish some households. But what we can see with our measurements is that by far the largest consumers of fuel are the richest households. So this is a tax exemption meant to help the poor pay less for fuel, but it ends up benefiting the rich much more in absolute terms. If we use the VAT in a different way, raising the tax rate on fuel, you could raise a lot of revenue, which could then be used to turn towards something else, like a social grant. If money raised by raising fuel can be spent on a cash transfer, targeted specifically to poor households, or to use it to increase the amount of existing social transfers, then a fiscal policy which started out looking like a plan to impoverish people can be transformed into a program that reduces inequality and reduces poverty. If you also look at the existing grants in Namibia, spending on these direct transfers are above average for the sub-Saharan African countries, and on the whole are very generous. But the programs are fractured at the moment, and they are not necessarily income-based in terms of eligibility. So those programs could be consolidated, removing the ones that currently exist, like disability grants, like child care grants, like veterans grants, and combining them into one single grant that is more specifically targeted to poorer households. Because currently people in all deciles, that is across the income distribution, are receiving these grants, both the poor and the rich. We also found that the old age pension has the largest effect on inequality and poverty, more because coverage is large than a good targeting system. And then finally, I know that a basic income grant has been proposed many times in Namibia. This can provide an income floor, a minimum amount of income that a household can use as they see fit, and that method has been seen again and again to be one of the best ways that households can meet their own needs. The criticisms of the grant are that it's unfair for the rich to also receive a grant, extra money, or that the grant encourages beneficiaries to stop working or to stop seeking work. The second issue has not been seen to occur in the studies where basic income grants have been experimented with. And in the first issue, that of rich households receiving benefits that they don't need, it can be avoided by the design of the financing of the scheme, implementing a progressive paying in schedule so that the rich may pay in more than they get out. But a better design, in my opinion, is to use an affluence test to determine beneficiaries. So either households will opt into the program, or we just exclude the top richest 10% of the population from benefits. So overall, a basic income grant does have real potential to reduce poverty and inequality, but by just how much depends on the design of its implementation. Lost it. Okay, so our final snapshot is going to be looking into education benefits, though there are several more interventions that we could talk about and focus on if we have more time. the education benefits, education impact is driven almost entirely by primary education spending. Spending in public school education is progressive. Primary education is most progressively distributed because poor households have more children and enrollment is universal. So relatively, you have more students in your household, you will receive the same benefit for each one. More households in lower income deciles receive more benefits than higher income deciles. Secondary education becomes less progressive because enrollment in those schools drops off as household income increases. Tertiary education, universities and colleges, those expenditures are regressive, meaning that richer households receive more benefits than the poor. Benefits become less progressive as the level of education rises because staying in school often means that you have the opportunity and space and resources to do so. And as a result, the small number of students reaching the tertiary level are disproportionately non-poor. I understand that there are current university student scholarship subsidy schemes in place, which are not in our model currently, but as it's a work in progress and constant need of refinement as data comes in. But we expect that those kinds of subsidies will also make tertiary education even more regressive. So a possible policy option to reduce inequality in the education sphere might be to target those subsidies so that those who can afford to pay higher education already are not receiving additional support through the fiscal system. Overall, a fiscal incidence analysis, that method that we use to measure the fiscal system and its effects on households, it's a powerful tool to highlight the strengths and weaknesses of different government interventions. We hope that its uptake by Namibian policymakers, as well as by civil society members, will increase the awareness of which policies are contributing to poverty and inequality, and which ones are reducing them. Once that's established, then we can do the work of finding and modeling and analyzing and eventually implementing creative changes to create a more equitable nation. Thank you.